views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey folks, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. That's our new show. It's a reporters roundtable. We bring in reporters so that you can find out what Bronx people are reading in their papers. You get to meet the reporters, find out who the people are writing those things, and then we get into kind of in-depth discussion about all of those issues that are important to you and frankly important to me as well. If you're saying, well, wait a minute, that's the guy who's on the other show. Yes, it's Gary Axelbank, and I host Bronx Talk and have hosted it, and I will host it Monday night. But for our purposes here, this is The Buzz. And we're pleased to welcome Samar Khurshid from the Gotham Gazette. Nice to have you with us. Welcome to the program. And Abigail Savage-Lou from City Limits. Nice to have you with us. We have already begun the discussion before you guys got here. We've already begun the discussion about really important Bronx and city issues. Samar, let's talk with you. First, before we get into some of these issues, just your own background. Let people know where you're from, how you got here, how you got to Gotham Gazette, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow, it's been a long journey. I'm from New Delhi.
Although you said you did just take the train from downtown, so it wasn't that long a journey. I joke, of course.
I'm from New Delhi, India. So I came to New York. I went to NYU for my master's in magazine journalism. In my final semester, I started interning at the Gotham Gazette because I've always been interested in politics. I wrote for a paper back home for 2 years. So I've always been interested in politics. I started working at the Gotham Gazette as an intern in September 2014, interned for them over, let's say, 9 months over the last whole year, and started full-time this year in January. And the last 6 months have been working out of the office, working very close to City Hall, covering City Council, a couple of the mayor's stuff, and city policy, and very closely looking at the budget for the last 6 months. And I'd be very glad to not look at budget anymore.
Unfortunately, for the purposes of this show, we're going to force you to do that. You know, in our discussion just before, and I asked you, do you like what you do? And you were, frankly, very enthusiastic.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to me about what's good about what you do. First of all, I can say, and in some form, I'm a little jealous because you're really right there when stuff is happening at City Hall, aren't you?
I love what I do. I grew up wanting to write about politics because my parents are politicians back home. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. You brought something up. We have to deal with that. What do they do? Who are they?
My father is a lawyer, a Supreme Court lawyer in India, and he's also a politician. He was a member of Parliament up until the new government was elected in 2014. And my mother started off as a journalist, as a political journalist, married a lawyer politician and became a politician herself.
And so do they now all of a sudden revile their son who's now on the other side of the line? I don't want to talk to him, he's the worst.
Well, I mean, I think they're hoping that I'll give up journalism and go into politics myself.
All right, so I interrupted you and you were just telling me about what you love about it, so let's just get into that a little bit.
Well, I mean, back home, I worked for a national paper, and I was working in human interest pieces and sort of feature-ish stuff. So it would be the political news of the time, but looking at it from a human angle. Here, I really get into the nitty-gritty of stuff, and that's the kind of sort of looking at how government works, which I couldn't do back home. It's not as easy. It's also because government here is a lot more transparent. But even there,
local people would not believe that, but that's okay.
And even then, just looking at how government works, how people work, how policy works, and it's been fascinating. It's been a great learning experience, and I've become a better journalist because of it.
Really, the stuff, and folks, if you haven't checked it out, Jayla just put up, the Gotham Gazette homepage, and you can see some really wonderful pieces in there, certainly by Samar. talk to me, as I hate to put it this way, as somebody from the outside who's like, wow, this is New York City, and it's not like you work in Greensboro, North Carolina. This is New York, New York. Give me, what's your impression? Is this an insane, unmanageable system, or as somebody who comes from elsewhere, is there like some sense to it, and it's like kind of okay?
You'd be surprised at how similar the two are.
You mean it's back in India?
Back in India. I mean, it's insane and manageable there as well. I mean, we like to call it organized chaos.
We've got that.
Yeah,
I'll tell you. The organized part, I'm not sure.
That's our society. That's my city, and that's my government. And it's shocking to see how the way Democrats and Republicans are here. It's the same back home with the two major national parties.
Wow. Very interesting.
One side leans, center, left of center, secular socialist, and the other side sort of right-wing nationalist party. It's similar.
I am going to get to the budget, but give me the biggest surprise that you have discovered, like whether it was being with the mayor or being with some council members or even the structure of government. What have you said? Wow, I can't believe that something is.
What will surprise you? I mean, what surprised me?
Yes.
And what will surprise you that I'm saying this is how accessible people are.
Really?
Yes.
Well, that would surprise me.
Because I could pick up the phone today and call up a congressman's office. Chances are, I might not get the congressman themselves, but I'll get a response. If I did the same thing in India, if I called a minister in central government, I wouldn't get anyone on the phone for a week.
It's fascinating, and frankly, and I've told both of them beforehand, it's nice to hear, kind of how we are from somebody who's, looking at it from the outside, quote unquote outside, because he's more inside than any of us. Let's talk about the budget.
Yeah.
Are you pleased? Do you get the feeling that the council is pleased? That the general public is pleased with what we saw in the budget?
Well, the council is definitely very pleased. They basically got pretty much everything they wanted. It's the earliest budget agreement in 15 years.
Give me a highlight, like one or two highlights that they're happy about and you think is generally accepted.
The council had a bunch of new priorities at the start of the session and start of the budget season, and they got baseline funding for libraries, 6-day service-ed libraries, for summer youth employment program to expand it to 60,000 slots, up from 50-something, or it was going to be 34,000. They got 60,000. Building up to 100,000. They got increased investment in youth, increased investment in senior case management. A lot of these were their top priorities, and they basically got everything they wanted.
Well, the mayor and the speaker are pretty much on the same political page, and I think that probably is a large part of that. We were talking before the show, and frankly, we did it on Bronx Talk 2 weeks ago, the notion of discrepancies in pay for UPK teachers.
Yes.
And we were talking before the show that this is still one of the unsolved issues. Talk to me a little bit about things that did not make it into the budget.
So two of the sort of big things that didn't make it into the budget. One is funding for nonprofits, the human service nonprofit sector that the city relies on. They contract with the nonprofits to provide services like homelessness services, care for seniors, mental health services. Now the nonprofit sector is facing a huge crisis, a looming crisis. There's like a 20% insolvency rate.
Right.
Because
and I have to tell you, in the Bronx, that is particularly poignant because in the borough of the Bronx, we probably have more nonprofits than anybody else.
Right.
And we can go back through history why that is. But anyway, so
the funding they need is like administrative, rent, maintenance.
Yeah, little things like that.
Like stuff that's not salaries. And now the mayor's the administration's made strides. They all nonprofits that contract with the city get the $15 minimum wage. So that's one big step. He added more money for salaries, but they say that they still need that funding to sort of make sure that they have the resources they need.
I really want to bring Abby into the conversation, so I'm cutting you off.
Sure, but you want to talk about pay parity.
Oh, pay parity, go ahead.
Pay parity for pre-K teachers. Yeah. Now, the nonprofit, at the community-based organizations that also serve that.
What was the bottom line that they wanted? Do you know? Is there a figure?
There's not a figure. They just want to be paid the same as Department of Education employees.
Right.
Yeah.
Abby Savage-Lou from City Limits, thanks for waiting. Nice to have you with us. A little bit about your background. How did you find your way to City Limits?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, and I've always loved writing, and I've always been really interested in different neighborhoods and in the crisis of gentrification, which I think was kind of all around me as I was growing up.
What neighborhood?
I grew up in Park Slope. I went to high school in the Lower East Side in the midst of its transformation. In college,
Which was where?
At Brown University.
Okay.
During the summer, I came home and I interned at the Red Hook Star Review.
There you go.
Yeah, they really, they taught me a lot, and they got me so invested in understanding issues. Well, I started sort of being interested in environmental issues, but I think through that experience I became really interested in housing and zoning, and then I ended up interning at City Limits and focusing on East New York. It was kind of my beat.
It was kind of a natural place for you to be in some form because you were in Brooklyn and you kind of had the territory in your back of your head.
Well, yeah, we were. It was really interesting, and it was kind of right as the studies of East New York that would eventually lead to the rezoning of East New York were beginning. So it was an interesting time. It was right at the start.
What is fascinating to me, both of the journalists that are here got started with internships. It's a vital thing for folks looking to advance not only in media, but in a lot of things. You ought to keep that in mind. So you've been working on zoning and working at City Limits for how long?
Well, after that internship, I have been a freelancer there for 2 years.
2 years. There's the notion of zoning in the borough of the Bronx. Talk to me about your impressions, especially I think the biggest rezoning right now is the Jerome Avenue neighborhood study. What's your impression right now of where they're at? And I guess the biggest question is really the one that you've already raised, and that is, will people get a chance to have input or sufficient input? And is this, regardless of what the city says, and I have a sense that there are some people who are genuine about it, are they bound to displace people in that area or businesses?
You know, it's really interesting to watch how in neighborhoods all across the city, in all 7 of the areas that have been announced as neighborhoods targeted for rezoning, people, there are people in every neighborhood who, some who are welcoming the change, some who are, and sometimes it's the same people, who are really very fearful of displacement and want to work really hard to make sure that whatever the city delivers in terms of zoning changes, that comes with all sorts of benefits for the community and protections for tenants. And I think that Jerome Avenue is a really interesting case. It's like the only neighborhood right now that's been targeted in the Bronx. And it's really interesting because they are there's a coalition there that
sure,
is...
let me interject for you because I know Bronx people. They're the most vocal and they're the most annoying. The question, listen, we are who we are. The question is, will the city really listen to them, or are they bound to get burned one way or the other? Maybe I'm asking you something you can't possibly answer.
Well, I don't know, but I can say that the comprehensiveness of their plan, their suggestions, their demands, it really kind of surpasses everywhere else in the city, I would say. And they also are they're presenting their demands much earlier than a lot of other groups in parts of the city. So, one is hopeful, right? And the city already has postponed its scoping, where they give a detailed.
You're right on. As a result of that, and I'm very proud of political activism in the Bronx, and it has had great effect over the years in many different. Whether it be zoning or a number of other things. And I totally agree with you. They were incredibly vocal, incredibly powerful, incredibly well organized. And just to provide a little history for folks, I'm sure, in the Bronx who know, this was very similar to what happened with CARA and the Kingsbridge Armory Redevelopment Alliance, because those people came in and they ended up getting probably the best CBA in the history of the United States of America. Mm-hmm. Whether that happens here, I mean, of course, that remains to be seen. Give me a comparison. We were talking before the show about what do you got, Long Island City and in Flushing. Is this a similar thing?
Flushing has been dropped.
Oh, has been dropped.
Yes.
Well, let's let her say
Sorry.
that. No, that's good. Listen,
that's your field, yeah.
Well, they wouldn't say dropped. They
would say dropped.
The Department of City Planning would say suspended for now. There were a lot. The council, Councilman Koo from Flushing, had a lot of concerns from the fact that it's already really crowded over there. His concerns about whether they would really be able to create enough affordable housing considering the hot market there already. But really, the big concerns that he shared with the Department of City Planning were very technical. They were that there's some disagreements still about how to manage the pollution cleanup of Flushing Creek. There's issues.
So there were complications that were hard to imagine. Complications more desperate than businesses being displaced or housing and the rents going up, which of course is very big. But these were complications, structural complications. What about Long Island City?
Let me just add, in Flushing, though, the other really weird one is that that the LaGuardia Airport planes go over that area in Flushing. So
that's part of it. But let's move it ahead and talk to me about Long Island City, and then we're going to take a break and we'll do our Buzz of the Week.
Sure. Yeah, Long Island City has been slowest, I would say, in terms of the Department of City Planning has not put forward a plan for that yet, but it's, it has a lot of experience with rezonings under the Bloomberg administration, so people are already conscious of what a rezoning means, and they're thinking about, what do we want now? What kind of infrastructure, what kind of mix of businesses needs to be encouraged? Those Bloomberg rezonings, didn't have a lot of housing for very low-income people. So there's lots of concerns that will come up.
Gotham Gazette's Samar Khurshid and City Limits Abigail Savitz-Liu are our guests. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to do our Buzz of the Week. And the Buzz of the Week, because both of them have written about it and both of them know a lot about it, is NYCHA and public housing. And if you know me and you know what I've talked about, not only on Bronx Talk, but even here, and if you know me out in the streets, I think this is one of the city's most significant issues, and we're never going to rehabilitate the city of New York and help people who need help unless we clear up what's going on in public housing. We're going to find out more about that with our Buzz of the Week right after this.
Me and my boy Matt had it good. He had catnip that was off the hook. But one day, he brings a girl home, and she's allergic to cats. Every sneeze was a nail in my coffin. Now I'm in a shelter. It's decent, but they don't even have Wi-Fi.
I already knew that I was going to go to college, from a young age. I definitely want to major in political science. After that, I'm going to get my law degree. Then I'm going to come back to Detroit, boost the economy, become the mayor or something, try to make the situation better for other people. I feel like I owe it to the city. I'm determined. It's going to happen. My name is Justin, and I am your dividend.
I love taking care of my mom. It wasn't easy at first. She learned how to better communicate her needs.
And you learned how to not ignore yours.
I discovered how to make healthier meals.
And I discovered how much I enjoyed them.
Becoming a caregiver is a learning experience for everyone. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
Hey, we are back with you for the Bronx Buzz, and our guests are Samar from Gotham Gazette and Abby from City Limits, and both have a point of view about public housing. So, Abby, talk to me about what you've written about as far as NYCHA, which was actually pretty recently, and then we'll get Samar in the dialogue as well.
Yeah, oh man, well.
Where do we begin?
Well, I've been working on a piece all week that isn't out yet, so I'm going to try to put that aside. But
rats! We want the exclusive. we want to beat your own publication to it.
I think that something that's really interesting is that NYCHA, everyone knows that public housing is in a fiscal crisis. That we hear all the time about how residents have to wait months and months to get repairs done, and part of the big problem is that there's a $17 billion shortage in capital funds, and there's also really tens of millions of shortage of operating funds each year. So,
and I'm going to have to throw in there, and mismanagement. I mean, come on. Go ahead, I'm sorry. I said it. They don't have to say it. I said it. Go ahead.
Well, last year, NYCHA released its 10-year plan, Next Generation NYCHA, with so many different strategies to try to address some of that deficit. And so really, there's just been a lot of monitoring. Like, are those strategies working? Like, which one, does the city, and so far it's going okay. There was some
Unless
news.
you live there. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Right. It might not be hard to see. It might be hard to see
that's
on
what I mean.
daily basis.
Samar, let's bring you into this dialogue. Is it a matter of, frankly, if somebody could write a check for $17 billion and then all of the problems are solved?
Not at all, because funding is just sort of one part of the problem. I was at an event this morning where Sholo Latoye, the chair and CEO.
Oh, that's right. Yes,
yeah, the chair and CEO of NYCHA,
piece today,
and she gave a gathering of business leaders and stakeholders. She gave them sort of like a brief update on the Next Generation NYCHA program, the plan. And there's a couple of aspects to it. There's the operational sort of overhaul, where they're going with a decentralized management structure, retraining property managers, and trying to pilot programs for 24-hour management service at 12 developments. There's the operational, there's the engagement and community planning sort of part of it, where they're going from being partnerships with community organizations to provide those sort of holistic services that they used to provide when they first started in 1934.
Right, but this is the similar process that the DOE went through, the Department of Ed, and then they take the CBOs and they're all working with the individual schools.
And as Abigail said, the funding is a big issue. There's been federal and state disinvestment, or underfunding, let's call it, underfunding in NYCHA for a very long time. The state has given $100 million for the first time since 1998. And
for the first time since '98, this is true. And $100 million. Listen, for you and me, that may sound like a lot, but
when you got $17 billion in needs,
oh my goodness gracious!
And
like throwing a guy a quarter in the street.
And the federal government since 2001, and this is all what Olatoya said this morning. She said the federal government since 2001 there's been a loss of $2 billion in funding from the federal government. So this is what NYCHA is facing. But with this new plan, this 10-year plan. She estimates, and the city estimates, and this is the de Blasio vision, that by 2025, they'll be fiscally stable. They'll be making money. They'll recurring revenues, and that $17 billion will be down to $10 billion in capital needs.
I want to ask each of you the same question. Our own Richie Torres, my sense in observing him, so from whatever you or the viewers might think of him, is that he's injected energy into the dialogue, if nothing else.
Absolutely.
In other words, by being somebody who's lived in public housing and by standing up. So you agree with that?
Just last week, was it last week? He introduced 2 bills that to explore an expansion of the Jobs Plus program, which is this holistic promoting employment and career pathways for residents of NYCHA, and he wants to explore expanding it across the city.
And these are things that people might not think about when they do that. Talk to me about at least your own interaction with Councilmember Torres and what he has or has not done.
Yeah, I think that one really interesting thing about his approach is that he is someone who is both very, watches NYCHA closely, critiques NYCHA when he sees a problem, but has also been supportive of some of the more publicly controversial reforms that NYCHA is undertaking right now. So,
give me an example of one.
Yeah. So the rental assistance demonstration program is a federal program where you convert public housing to privately managed on public land. Sort of Project Section 8 buildings, and that's been a conversion that's happened in other parts of the city, and it's just starting here. And Torres
There's
supports
always been concern about that kind of thing because when you privatize it, it changes the economics of it. Are you concerned that, gee whiz, you bring in outside companies, or you think this is good because the city, frankly, can't manage their properties? We only have like 30 seconds, so what do you think? And I'll let you answer the same question.
Yeah.
You like it?
Well, I would say that, from my research, I guess my personal opinion is that I think that it could be good if it's done very carefully, and if it's done in a way where residents have impact or have input, and it's carefully monitored.
Yeah, carefully monitored, of course, because the city has just such a horrible record of bringing in these consultants, and they find out that we've wasted money or they're not doing what they should. What do you think? How much time we got here, Michael?
It's a crucial part of their plan, of the next generation NYCHA plan. There's the next generation neighborhood plan, where one part of it is that they're going to build developments, and 3 are in progress right now, apparently. To build developments, 50% affordable, 50% market rate, with the help of the developers. So it's going to spur revenue for them.
These kinds of percentages are the kinds of percentages we've never heard before, because we've always heard 22% and 78 or something like that. I urge my friends and neighbors of the Bronx, check out Gotham Gazette. It's gothamgazette.com and citylimits.com or .org? .org. GothamGazette.com, citylimits.org, because these guys are tremendous journalists. And so Samar Khurshid, thank you so much for joining us. Abby Savage-Lou, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to keep reading what you write, and we're going to guarantee that we're going to have you back to talk more about the Bronx and the city of New York. Thank you so much. Guess what? We're saying goodbye. Thanks to Jayla and Michael and Bianca and all the people around us. See you next week.
If you want to stay in the know about the latest happenings en español, check out Diálogo Abierto, BronxNet's own Spanish show, Wednesdays, 6:30 p.m. on Channel 67. The latest in news, arts, culture, politics, and what's going on in your neighborhood. Diálogo Abierto, the best way to stay connected in Spanish. See you there. Te esperamos.